This podcast is brought to you by People's Food Co-op, a community-owned grocery store in downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin and Rochester, Minnesota, that promotes local farmers and producers through an emphasis on fresh, healthy, sustainable food. Anyone can shop. Everyone is welcome. For more information, visit them online at pfc.coop. This podcast is also brought to you by Trempealeau County Tourism. Whether your idea of fun is bicycling, hiking, or canoeing, afterwards head into the heart of one of their welcoming communities to experience historic architecture, independent shops, and locally owned dining establishments. Visit Trempealeau County Tourism online. We sat down with local country musician Pat Waters of the Pat Waters Band. We chatted about his path to music, influences, the origin of the band, COVID, playing live, the recording process, and upcoming summer shows. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is La Crosse Local.
Never bought a thing we didn't need. Wife and kids farming right there next to me.
I'm Pat Waters and the frontman of the Pat Waters Band. Born in, if you want to get specific, it was one of the hospitals in La Crosse, but I was raised and grew up here in Sparta, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And what got me into music, man, it's a tough question because I think it was a lot of things through life growing up. My dad was into country music specifically and storytellers and songwriters like that. I'm the third of four brothers. I was born in 1980. So it was, Van Halen were the gods in our house in the 80s. So my brothers had that influence. And it was kind of the dawn of Garth Brooks in the early 90s that coincided with around the time I started playing guitar. And I was not into country music to that point, but was like 12 years old when he did his NBC special. And it was like, oh man, country's a little different than it used to be, which is funny because I'm now more of a traditionalist probably than I was then, but that was sort of, it was a full package. And I come from a musical family. I've got several well-known area polka bands in my distant family, second and third cousins and great uncles who've fronted up those. So I kind of grew up around it, but sort of found my own voice with some of those influences kind of coming to a head.
What was like the record that you found when you were younger that maybe sent you down the right path from Van Halen, you mentioned, to the others?
Yeah. Garth Brooks, No Fences. Second album, Thunder Rolls on it, had Friends in Low Places, but it had a lot of really good, like there was a song in there called New Way to Fly, which is just today, I think stands up against any heartbreaking country ballad you've ever heard, man. It just, it was the time of cassette tapes and I wore three copies of that thing out. So that was really the one that sort of, there was a lot of albums growing up, a lot of the Van Halen catalog. There was a Ricky Skaggs album when I was 6 or 7 years old that my dad had that I listened to constantly, so I think we've all got those albums that have sort of pivoted or changed our direction musically throughout our lives. Later on it was a Pat Green album, then it was Jason Isbell's Southeastern that sort of turned my ear and pulled me different ways. So I think there's sort of guideposts through your life, like, oh, I kind of pivoted a little bit on how I felt about things. That was a really important piece of music.
Kind of digging into your music over the last couple of days here. Do you kind of relate to more of you referenced Jason Isbell, so I don't know if it's like a contemporary traditionalist in some ways. Jason Isbell, Sturgill Simpson, Colter Wall, to me are kind of the people I'm thinking of when I'm listening to you.
I love all those guys. I don't necessarily, and I appreciate that. I don't necessarily hear the influence in what I do. Isbell drives me nuts because he's a year older than me. And I'm like, how come he feels like he's lived 4 times longer than I have? Like the songs are so, the depth of emotion in the songs. So I look to him as somebody to chase from a songwriting perspective. And if you never catch him, but you get halfway there, I think you're probably doing pretty good. And Sturgill, big fan of Sturgill. So kind of that new traditionalist type thing. There's even some major label guys out of Nashville, as rough as Nashville's been and kicking out some pretty embarrassing music the last couple of decades. There's guys like Luke Combs, Justin Moore, some young guys. Randall King, I think, is another one that I've heard, and Midland. The mainstream is starting to sort of allow some feeling to come back into the into the music. And for me, man, that's what it's all about. And that's why country music is because of the feeling. It's an emotional art form. There's a lot of jokes about country. As I was, a teenager in the time of Nine Inch Nails and Pearl Jam, I was a huge country fan. So I took plenty of ribbing about it being, oh, it's always sad and it's twangy. It's like, man, you take some of that stuff that was coming out in the 90s and 90s country, like it's some of the deepest and most heartfelt music you've ever heard in your life. It's not hillbilly stuff at all, although I like the hillbilly stuff too. It's what I'm always trying to do when I'm writing and the music that we create is I'm trying to create a feeling to make somebody feel something, happy, sad, whatever it is. If you can touch somebody emotionally, you're doing a good job.
Kind of going back to Jason Isbell and kind of, you're referencing to writing music like that, man. I think I got into him much later in life, but man, like that song, If We Were Vampires, is like an exact example of what the hell is going on. Like I haven't heard a song from a country artist like this that just made you want to almost cry,
Right. And like who else, and this is the perfect Jason Isbell song. Who else could have a title like If We Were Vampires and turn it into one of the sweetest love songs you've ever heard in your entire life, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's that line in there where he says, maybe we'll get 40 years together, but one day you'll be gone and one day I'll be gone. And if you're in it, I think about my wife and I's relationship and it's like, yeah, you don't know what you've got. And it's just brilliant. He's writing on a level. I think a lot of people are writing on the surface and Jason Isbell's about 3-4 feet below, he's digging deeper in the motion and into the emotion.
So just reading up on you in some iteration of the Pat Waters Band has been playing since 2008, right? How did that band come together? Or is it basically you in some sense?
And we're mostly original members. So aside from bassists, we've had 3 bassists. We changed drummers out in the first year and that guy's been with us. The second guy's been with us ever since. So if you think about that, that's 14 years this year together as a group. And I tell you, I was in a band when I was in college at UW Eau Claire, but the band was based in this area. We played a lot in this area because the other 2 members were from here, and a little band called Firewater. And I had a lot of fun. We weren't that good, but we were a lot of fun. So people would come out and see us. Moved to St. Louis after I graduated from UW Eau Claire. Sorry, I don't have any short answers. So,
all good, man.
So I moved to St. Louis. Perfect. And with my then girlfriend and became my wife while I lived down there while she was going to school. Planned to just work on writing, didn't plan because my goal was come back up. And I'd sort of had this plan 4 or 5 years in the making. I'm going to come back. I'm going to start up a band. I had a lot of big dreams and been able to reach a lot of them, but planned to just write music. And I did write music and I recorded an album, my first kind of fully backed band album while I lived in St. Louis, along with some help from my buddy, Billy Hurst down there. But wound up playing solo shows for 3.5 years at this bar up the street from where I lived, kind of out of necessity. You know what I mean? Like it was like, I wasn't planning on playing music, but they'll give me $100 every 2 weeks if I go here and play and, groceries sound good. So I did that. I wound up playing like 85 shows as a solo artist at that place over the course of the next 3.5 years and actually really, really honed my chops as a front man and kind of, learned how to command a stage and control and try to get people's attention. And that's half the battle, right? Is pulling people in. So when we came back, it all kind of came together really interestingly. I had a friend who I knew who knew a drummer who was looking to play in a country band. So I talked to that guy, and that guy had a friend who was learning to play mandolin. So, hey, he'd like to come hang out and jam with us when we do practices. Okay, he can come jam. And we magically found our pedal steel guitar player, Rick Kreitziger, pulled him out of nowhere. And I can't remember if we had an ad out there or no, what it was is we're looking for a bass player. And I had a buddy who worked at the radio station at Con 97 in Sparta and said, hey, I had a bass player stop in 2 years ago and say, if you know any bands that are looking. He gives me that guy's name. That guy winds up living in Green Bay. He later does become our bass player, by the way, but he winds up living in Green Bay now, but says, I got a brother there who plays pedal steel and plays lead guitar though. You should talk to him. So we got his name. I don't even know if he was looking at the time, but it just sort of kind of pieced together, but really interestingly became a brotherhood over the course of the years. Rick, our pedal steel and lead player's wife, was coming to all our practices and she was writing stuff down. And she was, oh no, you guys, when you were doing that song, you decided to end it like this, and she came on to be our sound person, self-trained, basically learned how to run a board. To this day, she runs our board and lights for us. She's a fantastic sound engineer, but it's just developed into this family. Lord knows they could find a better lead singer, the big question is, well, you could probably go out and piece together this all-star band. And I think we've got a pretty good band, but the most important thing for me is the chemistry and the friendship. We genuinely care about each other. We're not sick of each other. That's kind of by design. That's kind of with the way we've structured things over the years, but we're going to have rehearsals Sunday, and I'm excited to go see my friends, play music with them. What a gift. So I think to have that mentality 14 years in, I think there's a lot of ways to screw that up along the way. And I'm really, really proud that we haven't.
Thinking about this sort of family that you have here with this music, but also just like seeing you at so many sort of local events, from Riverfest to all the other ones in the area years ago, related to COVID. How did COVID affect you? Was that affected everybody, but was it kind of something to get you off the road or get you from playing?
It was a blow, like it was to anybody who does this. Thankfully I had other things to pour my head into. We wound up buying a house very near the beginning of that, and my kids were home, so you're taking care of them. And the interesting experience for me and for us is this had been such a big part of my life for so many years that I didn't realize how much time I was spending in it. I didn't realize how much work it was to book the shows and advertise the shows and constantly stay up on social media and I didn't realize the grind that I had committed to until it wasn't even when I took myself out of it for that period of time. It was really last summer when I had to fire it back up again. And it was like, oh man, there's something to be said for momentum and a spinning wheel, and when you stop it, how much time it takes to kind of get it going again. So that was difficult. I struggled a little bit with writing during that time. I didn't know what to say. It just felt like a weird scenario. We played together a little bit. So that first summer of 2020, we only did one show that year. We wound up playing. Sparta kept their concert in the Park Series, and it was an outdoor thing. So we were like, okay, we're going to go do that. Still, we're trying to sort of get together, but it's like, it was through that time where you're like, oh, okay, I don't know if it's safe. Like, should we all be in a room in a basement together? Eventually we got like prepping for last year and coming out of everything. And we did a full summer last year. We played May to September, decided to kind of shut it down again in September, and really just focused on, we came into last year without a very tight show. We would just sort of like piece it together for the summer, like let's throw all the parts together. And we've been doing it long enough that we could put together a set. We weren't as tight as we had been. So we kind of spent the off season here, the fall, just sort of tightening up the show, kind of bringing some new songs in, trying to get things comfortable. And it's good because we got a really exciting summer of music. I like to hope that we're done with this. We'll see. I've thought that before, but I'm positive and I feel good about it. We all feel good. You mentioned a great batch of shows coming up this summer. Coolest part is some of these opportunities that we've had and that we continue to get to open for guys. I told you what a big 90s country guy I was. Open for a big long list now of dudes that were never quite human to me, like they were slightly above. I don't want to, they weren't gods or anything, but they were certainly untouchable. They were not humans, and to actually see them and have some of them turn out to actually be pretty dang decent humans is pretty cool. Doesn't always happen, but I look at that stuff and I go, man, would 14-year-old, do you think this was pretty cool? If he would, you made it, and he would. So
kind of reference new songs and new music in the mix, kind of looking through your kind of catalog of CDs and EPs. You're kind of releasing singles now. I think you got Right Way and Kid of Your Hometown.
Yep.
What was the process for writing those? Are you quick writer, recording, or COVID in the way, or how was that process?
Yeah, so it all depends. These latest projects, we recorded our first two albums. One of them was at Natural Recording in La Crosse, which isn't there anymore, but with a guy named Chad Wardwell, who engineered that one for us. The other one up in Eau Claire. Rick, our guitar player, has his own studio set up at his place. So the projects that we've worked on in the last couple of years, we've been able to do at our own pace. So you had a couple questions there. From a writing perspective, it depends. The Right Way, I think when I sat down to write it, I think I wrote it in one sitting, in an hour or two.
And I'm not trying to make a million, get more than my share for these wrinkles on my sunburned face, the gray that's in my hair. I spent my life feeding your family, I can't afford to feed my own. What's a man to do when his way of life is gone?
Kid in their hometown, I started probably 15 times. Like I had the idea for the song, and it wasn't a kid in their hometown at the time. It was just, the song is based on the fact that Deke Slayton, this, one of the original Mercury astronauts is from Sparta. And it all kind of originated from, took my kids to the library, and there's a little statue of Deke Slayton down there by the museum. And my kid asked, what's that statue for? I explained to him, well, this is pretty cool. One of the original astronauts. And if you think about it, like, nobody went to space, when this guy was a kid, yet he grew up to be somebody who eventually went to space. What was born out of that is this whole notion that when I was growing up, and I'm sure other people have had this experience, people would say stuff like, oh, well, nobody from here does things like that, or nobody from here becomes famous, or nobody from here does this, that, or the other thing. And the truth is, everybody who became anybody was a kid from somewhere. They weren't all just like sprouted out of the sidewalk in New York or LA. These are people who had a dream and chased it. So yeah, people from places like this do go do cool things. And here's an example. And, don't let anybody tell you that where you're from has anything to do with what you're going to do. I knew I wanted to tell Deke Slayton's story, but it wasn't until later on that I realized I wanted to make it about something that kids from around here and from small towns everywhere could relate to.
That's a cool concept, a cool story. So in terms of upcoming shows, you had a kind of a full schedule last year, but coming into 2022, what can people expect from those shows? Maybe they haven't caught you in a while, or, maybe haven't seen you. What can people expect for a live show from you guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing for us is if you haven't ever been out to see us, we try to make sure that everybody leaves there having had a good time. A lot of audience interaction, try to be pretty engaged. I probably talk too much. If you ask the other guys in the band, they'd probably say I talk too much. But man, for us, that's really what it's all about. And again, I talked about that emotional connection. It's a little harder sometimes in a festival setting when people are, 6 or 7 beers deep to hit them with the ballad. But, that's what it is for me. That's what I think country music superpower is the ability to connect with people. And when we go out and play a show, that's really what it's about for us. And it's how can we use this opportunity that we've been given, that we're lucky to have, to get to play in front of people? How can we use it to make other people's lives better? And how can we use it to make the best of this situation for us? And how can we have the best time we can? So that's the biggest thing for us. I love playing with these guys. We've been doing it for so long. A lot of it feels pretty natural. There's not that awkwardness of getting up there with new guys all the time. So, but that said, it's a big goal of ours to keep things fresh. So we've been spending time since fall, really working on adding a few new covers to the show, bringing as many of our originals in. And I think that's going to be the future for this band. We've climbed a lot of mountains in 14 years that I didn't know that we'd get to climb, and we got to climb a lot of them. To me, the next big one for us is how much can we lean on our original stuff, and can we be a band that is 100% focused in that direction? And so I do think there's a future for us that looks a lot different than what we've lived so far as a band, but we've had a couple opportunities to play all original shows. They've gone well. So we're starting to it's not going to be this year. I don't know that it'll be next year, but I think there's a down the road spot where we're going to kind of go, all right, time to take the training wheels off. Let's see if we got something here.
So you're kind of going from the cover band to more of a majority of originals. That's an interesting progression this far in the game. That's great.
It's a leap, but I don't think anybody who's become a fan of us would classify us as a cover band necessarily, because I think a big piece of our identity has been we've had originals. Like we had a song called I'm Your Buddy that's done really well for us over the years, and that people connect with this band very closely. And I'm glad that we have songs like that. We got a handful of them that people think of as that's a Pat Waters band song, more so than some of the covers that we've done for the last 14 years. I don't think people necessarily look at us as a purely cover band, but that's always been a component of our shows. And there may always still be a couple of cover songs pulled in here and there. I'm at a spot musically where I want to sort of graduate to the next level. And I think we collectively have talked about this, let's see what it looks like. Things change. You may not have the same opportunities you had when you were, willing to do whatever covers that you were throwing in the majority of, but I'm okay with that. I think it's an opportunity at some point here in the future to just sort of lean in on us as an artist and us and what we've created. We've got enough songs to do it, so there's no reason not to,
So, man, it sounds like you just have a busy schedule. You're kind of just kicking off the summer here. If people want to follow along, what's the best avenue for them to go to?
Yeah, a few different places to check out. Pat Waters Band, 2 T's in Waters, patwatersband.com. We're also on Facebook at the PWB, and we're on Instagram at the PWB as well. So those are the primary places. Facebook, we usually keep up to date with shows. The website's always got the latest shows on the schedule. So you can kind of see where we're going to be at. Again, it's going to be a fun summer, and we're looking forward to it.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.